What metrics is meant is to show trends. So these trends are meant to be linear and show that, from the very beginning, perhaps you have a low amount of documents, but as you're increasing, getting more documents into the TMF, but they're of good quality.
Welcome back, TMF Daily Enthusiast. I'm your host, Nicole Palmer, and today we're tackling a topic that sits at the core of a successful trial, TMF metrics. The trial master file, it's where every essential document, decision, and communication is captured throughout the trial. But here's the real question, how do we make sure this vital resource isn't just complete, but also the highest quality? And that's where TMF Metrics steps in. So in today's episode, my guest, Juan Garza, will be teaching us the key performance indicators, the KPIs, that can elevate your TMF strategy to the next level. We'll be exploring the metrics that truly matter, how to track them effectively, and what they reveal about the health of your TMF. So grab your headphones and get ready to learn how you can take your TMF to the next level by mastering the metrics that truly matter. Juan, welcome to the TMF Daily Podcast.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
This is going to be so great today. I am pumped. So let's just dig in. Are you ready? All right. So let's go over some basics. Can you just give us a high level overview of your career journey?
Mm-hmm. So my career actually started at the site level back when I was in Houston, Texas at the Texas Medical Center. I've worked in hospitals and clinics there in some academic and hospital settings. I've also worked in small and large CROs. I've worked in biotech, pharmaceutical companies, and, vendor companies as well. So kind of, a good variety of different roles as well along the way. And these last couple of years, I've actually specialized in the trial master file, which is something that I'm still very passionate about.
So let's just start. What was your first position in clinical research?
I was a data collector, clinical researcher, clinical study coordinator.
And what were you doing?
Learning exactly how to read the protocol, how to properly consent patients, how to release study drug, do some accountability for a diabetes study that I can recall. So then I moved to doing more oncology research back at MD Anderson, data entry, regulatory compliance back in Houston Methodist Cancer Center. So really managing the entire cancer center, me and a colleague of mine, looking at the compliance, knowing really how, working with monitors, dealing with monitors. Then I was able to pivot to getting into a global CRO. And then COVID hit, which is around the time. So it was not until I got into working with the CROs that I started learning exactly what the trial master file was. And it was a little different based on what I knew from our regulatory binders. So really knowing what a paper TMF was, what's the TMF index, really getting some good, solid, educational pieces and training. COVID hit, we got shifted to a remote setting or a hybrid approach, then fully remote. And then things got, into more of the electronic trial master file, and we're really working with some of these systems that we're all familiar with, like Viva Vault, Rave Metadata, Flex Global, tons of systems out there now. But I've really now just, have immersed myself completely into the TMF. I'm just so excited about it.
So before you got into clinical research, what were you doing before that?
I had just finished my education. So I have my background is in public health. I have a master's in public health and health promotion and community health science. And I also did another master's along the way in healthcare administration.
Wow, look at you. Congratulations. So you got your first clinical research job pretty much right out of college then?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it was actually not until I moved out of my hometown. So I'm from South Texas, back in McAllen, Texas. So I grew up there, I was raised there, did my went to school there up until my first master's. Then I decided to move out and go to Houston. And that's where kind of launched my clinical research career. I didn't really plan that, I had no idea. It all started more of like collecting data and really just knowing how to collect data, and then knowing how to enter data. And then things kind of gradually, I just kind of stuck with research, and then I got into regulatory, and then things kind of evolved after that. Kind of been my thing after all these years, 7+ years now. So it's
amazing. You were one of the lucky ones that just got in. There was no hurdles.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's been moments in my career where there's definitely been hurdles along the way, but I think it's that perseverance, that passion that has kind of kept me going. And then also having good mentors, good managers along the way that have been at key points where they've taught me some really good foundations of like what regulatory was, what the TMF was.
All right. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about metrics. So first of all, let's just talk about the main TMF metrics, why we track them. What are they? Why we track them?
The metrics are very critical to track, really how the health of the study is. So we talk about, TMF, and we're able to reach that by looking at the quality, timeliness, and completion. That equals TMFR health. Really looking at what's the health of the study, of the TMF. And how's that story going? So we use metrics to really identify what things need to be improved on, what things we can continue to do better, and really focus on certain elements along the way.
So when we talk about completeness, what does that mean? How do we know something's complete? For listeners that don't know, they're kind of new to this.
A document has a long history. If you think about it, it goes from all the way down to from the site, getting those, signatures from those PIs, getting those dates, getting it collected and reviewed by the the monitor, getting it into the hands of finally the CRO or the sponsor. And it has a long history of reviews up until it gets to the point of getting updated or uploaded into the eTMF, where it's then reviewed again and finalized. And we'd say at that point, it has been completed and it's there forever.
So there's typically 2 reviewers then, or is one reviewer what do you do when you only have one reviewer?
We hope that you'll have multiple eyes on it. We don't want to put people to just have one person review a document. We want it's a collective team that works together to review these documents up until finalization and completion.
All right, and then we got quality. So I'm looking at a document and the quality of it. What does that really mean when I'm tracking that metric?
When you're looking at quality, you're looking at, you can be talking about a variety of things, but really quality of a document. You're looking at those Alcoa principles. You're reviewing the document from, top to bottom, identifying different things that are required to be there. For example, 1572, properly knowing how to fill out the 1572 or the FDF, knowing exactly who are the listed sub-Is, the PI, who is, what laboratory are you working with? Very critical information that is reviewed to ensure that, you're in compliance.
And then timeliness. That's always a fun one because it seems like a lot of people have different opinions on this. So I'm curious, when are we tracking the timeliness of a document? Is it the day it was signed, the date we receive it?
Well, when we're talking about TMF metrics, we're looking at the time. There's different measurements, but one of the metrics that I can think of right now is from the time of finalization to the time that it was uploaded to the TMF. That's a measurement, or a measurement of when a document, unfortunately has been rejected from the TMF to the time when it has been corrected back to the site, then re-uploaded correctly. That's another time frame that we can look at using metrics.
So what's a good time frame? Say I get a document, I'm rejecting it. What's that turnaround time to like that workflow? How much time we got till we can get that document accepted and uploaded in that TMF?
It really depends on your company. There's different, SOPs. There's different TMF plans that have, language that say, within 30 days, within, is pretty much standardized from what I've seen, 30 days to upload a document, but it varies depending on the situation.
So how do you ensure like your TMF metrics are aligned with the overall study goals?
I think communication across different stakeholders. You want to talk to your stakeholders. You want to talk to your vendors, ensuring that you're all aligned. You all have the same goals and you all are really on the same page when it comes to ensuring that all the deliverables are in agreement across your study.
So let's say you're working at a CRO and you're contracted with a sponsor. And at the beginning of the study, you've agreed upon the certain metrics that you're going to be tracking through the study. And then the sponsor has questions about your TMF with a metric that you may not necessarily have been tracking. So you decide like, all right, there's one more metric. We want to add it in the middle of the study. Like, is that hard to do?
It is difficult. It's something that really isn't best practice. I think the best approach would be to be aligned at the very beginning of the study, especially if you have a new CRO that you're working with. And their expectations might be a little different than other CROs that you've already worked with. So it's really having that initial rapport with them, relationship with them initially, and really just being transparent and saying, hey, this is how we've been working with our CROs. What do you think? Gain their input, gain their feedback. And that's how the alignment will happen, I think, more efficiently.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Can you maybe share with us an example of how a TMF metric helped identify maybe a potential risk like early in the study?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember when I was working with this, with the COVID booster study, suddenly we're going to be receiving these documents where we had no idea where they were to be filed. As experts as we are, we still didn't know how to handle these certain documents that were coming into our pipeline. And we had a number of documents which were required to be uploaded and reviewed and that sort of thing. So it was really taking us a lot. It was really throwing the timeliness metric, off. And we were like, what do we do? So, we had to kind of pause, take a step back, go back to the drawing board and discuss with our upper management, with our team and saying, hey, we're receiving these documents. How can we handle these? Where are they filing? Where are they to be filed? And that's probably the best approach rather than just filing them everywhere because you just think, I think it goes here, that would cause a lot more, resources, a lot more time to fix. So, and money, which is, these days, you can't afford to lose that, at all. Time is money. Time is precious. So,
So how do you use TMF metrics to improve efficiency, like in your processes?
I think when you're looking at different processes, it's important to just be transparent with all your stakeholders. For whatever reason, there's always going to be room for improvement. There's always going to be processes. For instance, in that case where I was talking, where we didn't know the process of how those documents were being received. That's a good way to come together as a group, find a solution, get everyone on board as far as where these documents are to be filed. So it's really just having that constant communication throughout your study teams. And you really want, whether it's internal or external, you want to be able to have people believe you that, establish that trust that metrics are on your side and that you're setting people up for success and not failure. And that's what metrics are there to do is to make people's lives easier, people's jobs easier. What really excites me is when there's people start thinking outside the box and start coming up with solutions where there's like now some metrics that a few years ago you weren't able to, you had issues with duplications, and you didn't have that metric that would allow you to capture, duplicate documents. So now they've come up with this new metric where you're now able to track duplicates, or you're now looking at some of these newer metrics now where you're able to come up with new visualization metrics where you come up with graphs and charts and timelines, which are really, exciting. And, it allows people to really visually see what's happening and kind of where the improvement needs to be, or where you're doing a really awesome job.
So you talk a lot about having like communication early on with your stakeholders, and we just getting ready and study startup, and we're thinking about metrics besides like the three obvious ones, because you can get kind of granular on those. What are some things we should be thinking about of like, what other metrics can we be tracking besides, like you mentioned, duplicates? Is there anything really else that should be crossing our minds?
It's really critical to get those essential documents filed correctly. There's always going to be different documents from sponsors where even, experts like, you and I are going to have a little trouble filing, but it's really knowing how to come together on those difficult moments with your team to get through those hurdles in the TMF. So it's really trying to anticipate. As a manager, you're anticipating when things may get a little bit more complicated. You're doing risk management basically, and risk mitigation at that point. So yeah.
So how do you prioritize like TMF metrics when resources are sort of limited?
When, let's say there's a new company out there that perhaps doesn't have all this fancy, systems, you really have to hone in on the knowledge and background of your staff, know exactly what strengths does the group have, does the team have, perhaps a majority of your staff is very strong in the clinical operations, but you may need some, experts that their background has a lot more statistics or data management, because those are, a lot more difficult documents, like the majority of us can probably agree on. So you may need those key experts on that to help you. So really knowing your staff, the strengths and your weaknesses of them, just ensuring that they have all the training and the capacity and, to do a proper TMF review and quality checks and, upload.
I love that. That's such good advice right there. What common mistakes do organizations make when they're analyzing TMF metrics?
I think a lot of mistakes that they do is perhaps they focus on too many metrics. So rather than honing in on specific, areas where, there may need to be improvement, or they're focusing on the wrong thing, perhaps they're putting all their resources in the clinical operations where, there's probably no issues. It's very streamlined. It's just the day to day. But when they run the reports and they're focusing on statistics or, the data management documents, that's where, perhaps there may be a need to be a shift of resources and maybe more attention to that.
What's the biggest challenge you faced in maintaining data quality within your TMF metrics?
I think it's really important timeliness. We emphasize, the industry now emphasizes a lot on timeliness, where I think people go wrong is when you're focusing on speed rather than quality, is when things may get missed, and that's where things may have a negative effect. So it's really focusing on quality of the document and really ensuring that you're as accurate and confident as possible where these documents are being uploaded.
Yeah. Quality over quantity, I always say. Like, let's get it right the first time if we can. Like, We always have a crunch for time, but nobody cares how long you've spent time on the documents. They want to know the metrics, like where are we at and why,
Right.
right? How do you balance the need for comprehensive data with the risk of information overload in the TMF metrics?
I think it's important to not really focus on so much on the metric side, but really just focusing on what you can do. Whether you're a support analyst, whether you're a TMF manager overseeing a number of studies, it's really being able to run those metrics every few months, and really identifying those action items, following up with your team, on how those action items are being resolved, communicating with your stakeholders, ensuring that you're aligning with not just your stakeholders, but throughout all your plans, your study plans, and I think that's what ensure quality.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe a time when a specific TMF metric directly influenced a critical decision?
Yes, I recall that there was a time where we were focused on timeliness, and there were different documents that we were reviewing that didn't have dates on these documents, which were difficult to measure. There were also other documents that were being received that we did not have a proper standardized process on how we were going to be handling this document.
Was it a CV? Give us an example of a document. I'm running my brain on this one. What wouldn't have a date on it?
They can be just reports, reports with no, perhaps there's a, 50-page report that you have to upload, with no dates. So those were difficult documents to handle. So it's those critical documents where you may have to step back and say, hey, these certain documents are really messing up with our metrics. Perhaps it's best to just remove these so that we can, have better alignment across the board with how we're, delivering these metrics. There's always some flexibility with how we can, interpret the metrics. But it's really critical to know exactly how we can handle, and really coming together as a team to really find solutions to these types of documents.
So how do you communicate the TMF metrics to those non-technical stakeholders?
I think it's a great opportunity when you don't have people that are not that familiar, because it really allows you to show your leadership at that point and really show them the correct way on how to do, either understand the TMF metrics or different processes that are expected within the industry. It allows that. It also gives them, I would encourage you all to really train them as much. There's a lot of training that would happen. On the flip side, you'd have really trained people that would really be ready for the TMF at that point. These people that, may not be so tech savvy may be very critical in the process of reaching your goals. As you're talking, I'm thinking about, there's people that, another issue that happened where, this person was, out for either maternity leave, or they're out on PTO, and there was a discrepancy on that specific site because they were just not uploading these documents. So it could be as far, as much as the person's not there, no one's covering for this person, or they don't have access to the TMF to upload these documents. Therefore, this metric is, a little lower than expected this month. So that would explain it. So it's different things like that you have to look at all angles and really start, questioning yourself, what's really going on.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. What role does TMF metrics play in regulatory compliance, and how do you keep up with the standards?
It plays a huge part in regulatory compliance. The TMF ensures, compliance and inspection readiness, which ultimately is what we want to show when, there's FDA or auditors coming in. It shows compliance. It shows that we are, we have all the documents that are necessary to ensure that, we are doing our due diligence in these trials that we run.
So for those that don't know, like, where can we go to find these regulations or guidelines on TMF metrics? Like, where should we be looking if we don't have any idea?
Well, there's a lot of organizations, professional organizations that you can be a part of and become a member and affiliated with. So I would encourage that. I would look at also going into just, checking out the FDA, there's the EMA. So there's different coaches. There's so many resources now. There's different coaches like yourself, teaching these courses that can really help to, engage, educate, and empower people to do their job and ensure compliance.
So how do you ensure TMF metrics remain relevant and actionable as that study progresses?
Start documenting as you're going through the study. You would have meetings with your teams. You would have, meeting minutes, action items. You'd have, lists, which you can come back and revisit and track to see if these items are being resolved accordingly.
So when you're having meetings about the metrics, is it like once a month, every 6 months, once a year, and a study? Like, how often are we meeting about the metrics? Ballpark.
Hopefully it's not at the end of the study.
Right.
But, if there are, some fires to burn that have been caused, it's important to, meet a little bit more frequent than, perhaps every 2 weeks, depending on the severity of what you're dealing with. So yeah, it's important to just, continue to follow up. And what metrics is meant is to show trends. So these trends are meant to be linear and be, and show that, from the very beginning, perhaps you have a low amount of documents, but as you're increasing, getting more documents into the TMF, but, they're of good quality.
And how do you integrate your TMF metrics with other data resources to get a holistic view of your study's performance?
For the majority of the metrics we're able to get from our systems. However, there's supplemental resources that you can get, different reports. You can get different systems where you get a better visualization of like a timeline of when, PMs can track, when specific documents are. So there's these different metrics now coming on in the industry that are helping to get a better and holistic view of our performance overall.
So I always ask my guests 2 questions at the end. And the first one is, what's the best career advice you've ever received and who's it by?
Best career advice is whenever you're able to really master a skill, what's so rewarding is when you're able to teach it to others and see their success. And I remember my manager back when I was learning regulatory for the first time, it was all paper, and her name was Deborah Yetman. And she's been a great person at that specific time for teaching me regulatory the right way. So I have to give her a lot of credit. I have to give, even people like you who are on this podcast and giving us clinical research professionals and TMF experts to a platform to really voice out our expertise and also allow us to communicate, to educate others and empower others, hopefully, in the industry. So I thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you. And my last question for you is, what's your favorite TMF document and why?
My favorite TMF document would have to be, coming from a regulatory background, I'd have to say the 1572.
How come?
It's just, it's just like, it's a really important document. It's got the PI, it's got the sub-Is. It tells us just so much information. A great document that really tells a lot, an essentials document. And, there's been so many times where I've handled 1572s in my life. So it's just, it's one of those that, you just love, you end up loving it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Juan, this was such a great conversation, and I am grateful for it. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much, Nicole.